Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive? We've got a fascinating one lined up today, all about Okinawa.
Now, if you've been following along with us, you know we love to uncover those hidden histories, those connections that make a place truly unique.
And Okinawa, well, it's a treasure trove of cultural influences, a place where East meets West in the most fascinating ways.
For this deep dive, we're drawing from George Kerr's book, Okinawa, The History of an Island People.
It's an incredible resource packed with insights into this island chain's complex past.
So, ready to journey back in time? Let's start at the very beginning, shall we?
Piecing together Okinawa's prehistory. Now, that's a puzzle, isn't it?
It really is.
Kerr talks about archaeologists working with these fragmented clues, pottery shards, ancient tools, the occasional shell ornament. It's like trying to solve a mystery with only half the pieces.
That's a great analogy. And it's true. Those fragments, while incomplete, can tell us a lot. It's like, imagine finding a faded photograph. Even with some damage, you can still glean details about the people, the clothes they wore, even get a sense of the time period.
It's like those detective shows where they zoom in on a tiny detail and suddenly the whole case cracks wide open.
Exactly. And sometimes those tiny details lead to the biggest surprises.
Okay, so spill the tea. What kind of surprises are we talking about when it comes to Okinawa's prehistory?
Well, let's take the Yaeyama culture, for example. It was prevalent in Okinawa's southern islands. And get this, what's fascinating is its connection to places far to the south, Indonesia, Melanesia.
Oh, hold on. You're telling me Okinawa has ties to Southeast Asia? That's way down south.
It is, and it completely changes our understanding of Okinawa's origins. It reveals a much more complex and, frankly, more fascinating story than we might have imagined.
Yeah, I'm already getting the sense that Okinawa wasn't always closely tied to Japan like it is today.
You're picking up on it. And to really drive that point home, Kerr talks about these plank-built boats. They were essentially cultural bridges connecting Okinawa to this vast maritime network.
So we're not just talking about fishing boats here, right? These were vessels of cultural exchange.
Precisely. And it just goes to show you, we often underestimate the seafaring capabilities of past civilizations. These boats facilitated cultural exchange, connecting Okinawa to a much wider world than we might have imagined.
This southern influence is already blowing my mind. But what about influences from the north? Did Japan play a role in shaping prehistoric Okinawa?
Absolutely. As we move north in the Okinawan archipelago, the influence of what's known as the Jomon culture from Japan becomes pretty clear.
Okay, so for those of us who aren't archaeologists, give us the Jomon crash course.
So picture this. Jomon culture emerged in Japan around 14,000 BCE. It was characterized by distinctive pottery, established villages, and a more semi-sedentary lifestyle. And these cultural elements, well, they found their way to Okinawa.
Particularly in those northern islands, right?
Exactly. It shows that cross-cultural exchange was happening. Okinawa was this meeting point for ideas and practices from both north and south.
It's like this cultural crossroads. Fascinating. It makes you wonder, though, who were these early Okinawans? Did they resemble the Japanese? Or did they have their own distinct look?
Well, that's where it gets even more interesting. Kerr dives into this. He explains that the Ryukyuan people, which by the way includes Okinawans, they're a distinct group. Now, while they share some similarities with the Japanese, particularly those from the southern Kyushu region,
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
they possess unique characteristics that set them apart.
It's like they took these different influences and wove them into something entirely their own.
You've got it. And that's what makes studying Okinawa's history so captivating.
Absolutely. So we've got this picture of prehistoric Okinawa.
It's a blend of influences, a melting pot of cultures, all leaving their mark. But how much of this ancient past is visible in Okinawa today? I mean, we have the archaeological evidence, sure.
But are there any living echoes of these prehistoric influences?
Oh, absolutely. Knowing about these ancient connections is one thing, but what's even more remarkable is how they continue to echo in Okinawa today.
Okay, now you've got my attention.
Right. It's not just buried artifacts and ruins. We're talking about living traditions. Kerr highlights some great examples. Remember those curved jewels we talked about, the magatama?
Yeah, those were fascinating.
In mainland Japan, you'd probably only find those in a museum nowadays. But in Okinawa, they're still used by village priestesses.
Wow, seriously?
It's an unbroken link to these ancient rituals.
That is incredible. To think those traditions have survived for so long, it really speaks to the power of Okinawan culture.
Right. And it's not just the magatama. Kerr describes this thing called a humming bulb arrow. Again, something you typically only see in a museum display.
Oh, right. I remember that from the book.
In Okinawa, they use it ceremonially.
Yeah.
House dedications, launching canoes, even village festivals.
It's like stepping back in time.
I know. Okinawa has somehow preserved these traditions that have long vanished in other parts of the world.
Speaking of echoes of the past, what about architecture? Does that reveal anything about ancient Okinawa's connections?
Oh, absolutely. Think about the contrast in Okinawa. You have urban areas where the influence of Chinese and Japanese architectural styles is undeniable. But then you venture into the rural areas and boom, it's like a different world.
Oh, like more traditional Okinawan styles.
You see these traditional thatched huts, some with walls daubed with clay, built directly on the earth.
So it's like two different worlds existing side by side.
And it's in those rural areas where we find even more fascinating connections. Kerr describes these communal storehouses in remote Okinawan villages. They bear a striking resemblance to those found in the mountains of Formosa.
Wait, Formosa? You mean present-day Taiwan?
That's right. These subtle but significant parallels, they're everywhere in Okinawa, which makes studying its history so fascinating.
It's like those architectural styles are whispers from the past, each telling a story of cultural exchange and adaptation. Okay, so we've got these intriguing artifacts and architectural links. What about other aspects of Okinawan culture? What other hidden connections can we uncover?
Well, let's look at something seemingly simple. How Okinawan women traditionally carry heavy loads.
Okay, I'm intrigued. I usually just reach for a backpack.
Right. But in northern Okinawa, they use this band across the forehead.
Interesting. Is there a particular reason for that?
Well, guess what? It directly links to the Tayal people of northern Formosa. They use a similar method.
Get out of here. You're telling me we're talking about traditions that have survived for centuries, maybe millennia, separated by the East China Sea? That's amazing.
It's incredible, right? And it gets even more intriguing. In southern Okinawa, women traditionally balance loads on their heads, just like women in Korea.
So we're not talking about random chance here. These are cultural echoes.
Exactly. They're hints at these ancient migration patterns and connections that we're only beginning to understand.
It just goes to show you that even everyday activities, things we might take for granted, can be clues to a much deeper past, a much more interconnected past. This is blowing my mind.
Right. And there's more. Kerr talks about hand tattoos. They were once quite common among Okinawan women.
I can see why. Tattoos often hold such deep cultural significance.
Absolutely. Now, this practice isn't as prevalent today.
That's a shame. I wonder what stories those tattoos could tell.
I know. But here's where it gets really interesting. Kerr draws a connection between these tattoos and a distinct hairstyle. It's called katakashira.
Katakashira. Okay, I've never heard of that.
Some older women in more remote parts of Okinawa still wear it. And get this, you can find similar hairstyles thousands of miles away, among the Yami people of Orchid Island and even further in the Philippines.
Wait, seriously, a hairstyle that links Okinawa to this vast network of Pacific cultures? My mind is officially blown. This is incredible.
It's a powerful reminder that even seemingly isolated places like Okinawa have these fascinating interconnected histories. And it just makes you wonder what other hidden links are out there just waiting to be discovered.
This is why I love these deep dives. You never know what you're going to uncover. We've gone from chipped pottery to ancient sailing routes to hairstyles that span entire oceans. What's next?
Well, we haven't even touched on the influence of language yet.
Oh, come on. You're kidding, right? You've already blown my mind a dozen times this episode. All right, so language, Okinawa, spill the tea. Okay, I'm ready to untangle this linguistic puzzle. What can language tell us about Okinawa's past?
You know how we've been talking about Okinawa as this cultural crossroads? Well, the linguistic landscape really reflects that. Think about it. You have the languages of mainland Japan.
Right, like standard Japanese.
Exactly. But then you have the Ryukyuan languages spoken throughout the islands of Okinawa. They share a common ancestor with Japanese.
Right.
But over centuries, they've evolved in their own unique direction.
So it's like Japanese is their distant relative, but they've, developed their own personalities over time.
Perfect analogy. And there's this thing called intonation that really sets them apart. Kerr even suggests that these unique Ryukyuan intonation patterns might have ties to Indonesian languages.
Oh, really?
It's true. Just adds another layer to those fascinating southern affinities we talked about.
It's amazing how language can hold these hidden connections to the past. So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. Big picture, what's the biggest takeaway? If someone asked me about Okinawa after listening to this, What should I tell them?
Tell them Okinawa is like this tapestry woven from threads of many cultures. You've got Japanese influences, Chinese influences, Southeast Asian, even hints of Polynesian. It's a place where the past is vibrantly alive,
Definitely.
ancient traditions persisting alongside modern life.
It really makes you realize history isn't just about dates and battles and all that.
It's about people.
Yeah.
It's about their stories and the incredible ways cultures have interacted and influenced each other over time.
Absolutely. It's about those human connections.
Exactly. And what's so exciting about Okinawa is that there's always more to uncover. Every artifact, every tradition, every word spoken holds the potential to unlock something new.
To deepen our understanding.
Exactly.
So to our listeners, if this deep dive has sparked your curiosity even a little bit, don't stop here. Pick up a copy of Okinawa, The History of an Island People. Keep exploring, and let us know what other fascinating connections you uncover.
We'd love to hear from you.
Until next time.
Bye, everyone.